Okay, we are going to read chapter 48 today. Yesterday when we left off, Zero, now that he knows how to read, he figured out that Stanley's name is on the suitcase that the warden was trying to take from them. And we know that the attorney general has showed up as well as a lawyer for Stanley. And Stanley was super confused. He was like, how can my family even afford a lawyer? It's just a whole bunch going on. So let's figure out if we can see what's going on. So we're going to read chapter 48 today. We will finish tomorrow. Chapter 48. They slowly walked back to camp. The tall man was the Texas Attorney General, the chief law enforcement officer for the state. Stanley's lawyer was named Mrs. Marengo. Stanley held the suitcase. He was so tired he couldn't think straight. He felt as if he were walking in a dream, not quite able to comprehend what was going on around him. They stopped in front of the camp office. Mr. Sir went inside to get Stanley's belongings. The Attorney General told Mr. Pendanski to get the boys something to drink and eat. The warden seemed as dazed as Stanley. You can't even read, she said to Zero. Zero said nothing. Mrs. Marengo put a hand on Stanley's shoulder and told him to hang in there. He would be seeing his parents soon. She was shorter than Stanley, but somehow gave the appearance of being tall. Mr. Pendanski returned with 2 cartons of orange juice and 2 bagels. Stanley drank the juice, but didn't feel like eating anything. Wait, the warden exclaimed. I didn't say they stole the suitcase. It's his suitcase, obviously, but he put my things from my cabin inside it. That isn't what you said earlier, said Mrs. Marengo. What's in the suitcase? The warden asked Stanley. Tell us what's in it, then we'll open it and see. Stanley didn't know what to do. Stanley, as your lawyer, I advise you not to open your suitcase, said Mrs. Marengo. He has to open it, said the warden. I have the right to check the personal property for any of my detainees. How do I know there aren't drugs or weapons in here? He stole a car too. I've got witnesses. She was nearly hysterical. He is no longer under your jurisdiction, said Stanley's lawyer. He has not been officially released, said the warden. Open the suitcase, Stanley. Do not open it, said Stanley's lawyer. Stanley did nothing. Mr. Sir returned from the office with Stanley's backpack and clothes. The Attorney General handed Mrs. Marengo a sheet of paper. You're free to go, he said to Stanley. I know you're anxious to get out of here, so you can keep the orange suit as a souvenir, or burn it, whatever you want. Good luck, Stanley. He reached out his hand to shake, but Mrs. Marengo hurried Stanley along. Come on, Stanley, she said. We have a lot to talk about. Stanley stopped and looked at Zero. He couldn't just leave him there. Zero gave him the thumbs up. We can't leave Hector, Stanley said. I suggest we go, said his lawyer with a sense of urgency in her voice. I'll be okay, said Zero. His eyes shifted toward Mr. Pendanski on one side of him, then to the warden and Mr. Sir on the other. There's nothing I can do for your friend, said Mrs. Marengo. You are released pursuant to an order from the judge. They'll kill him, said Stanley. Your friend is not in danger, said the Attorney General. There's going to be an investigation into everything that's happened here. For the present, I am taking charge of the camp. Come on, Stanley, said his lawyer. Your parents are waiting. Stanley stayed where he was. His lawyer sighed. May I have a look at Hector's file, she asked. Certainly, said the Attorney General. Miss Walker, go get Hector's file. She looked at him blankly. Well? The warden turned to Mr. Pendanski. Bring me Hector Zeroni's file. She stared at her. Get it, she ordered. Mr. Pendanski went to the office. He returned a few minutes later and announced the file was apparently misplaced. The Attorney General was outraged. What kind of camp are you running here, Miss Walker? The warden said nothing. She stared at the suitcase. The Attorney General assured Stanley's lawyer that he would get the records. Excuse me while I call my office. He turned back to the warden. I assume the phone works. He walked into the camp office, slamming the door behind him. A little while later, he reappeared and told the warden he wanted to talk to her. She cursed, then went inside. Stanley gave Zero thumbs up. Caveman, is it you? He turned to see Armpit and Squid coming out of the rec room. Squid shouted back into the rec room, Caveman and Zero are out here. Soon all the boys from Group D had gathered around him and Zero. Good to see you, man, Armpit said, shaking his head. We thought you were buzzard food. Stanley is being released today, said Mr. Pendanski. Way to go, said Magnet, hitting him on the shoulder. And you didn't even have to step on a rattlesnake, said Squid. Even Zigzag shook Stanley's hand. Sorry about, It's cool, said Stanley. We had to lift the truck clear out of the hole, Zigzag told him. It took everybody in C, D, and D. We just picked it right up. It was really cool, said Twitch. X-Ray was the only one who didn't come over. Stanley saw him hang back behind the others a moment, then returned to the rec room. Guess what, said Magnet, glancing at Mr. Pinansky. Mom says we don't have to dig any more holes. That's great, Stanley said. Will you do me a favor? Asked Squid. I guess, Stanley agreed, somewhat hesitantly. I want you to. He turned to Mrs. Marengo. Hey, lady, you have a pen and paper I can borrow? She gave it to him, and Squid wrote down a phone number, which he gave to Stanley. Call my mom for me, okay? Tell her I said I was sorry. Tell her Alan said he was sorry. Stanley promised he would. Now you be careful out in the real world, said Armpit. Not everybody is as nice as us. Stanley smiled. The boys departed when the warden came out of the office. The attorney general was right behind her. My office is having some difficulty locating Hector Zeroni's records, the attorney general said. So you have no claim of authority over him? Asked Mrs. Marengo. I didn't say that. He's in the computer. We just can't access his records. It's like they've fallen through a hole in the cyberspace. Because remember, they deleted Zero's records. Yeah. A hole in cyberspace, said Mrs. Marengo. How interesting. When is his release date? I don't know. How long has he been here? Like I said, we can't. So what are you planning to do with him? Keep him confined indefinitely without justification while you go crawling through black holes in cyberspace? The attorney general stared at her. He was obviously incarcerated for a reason. Oh, and what reason was that? The attorney general said nothing. Stanley's lawyer took hold of Zero's hand. Come on, Hector, you're coming with us. Oh, so Zero's out too.
Let's go.
Okay, I'm going to read one more chapter. It's really short. Chapter 49. There never used to be yellow-spotted lizards in the town of Green Lake. They didn't come to the area until after the lake dried up. But the townsfolk had heard about the red-eyed monsters living in the desert hills. One afternoon, Sam, the onion man, and his donkey, Mary Lou, were returning to his boat, which was anchored just a little offshore. It was late in November, and the peach trees had lost most of their leaves. Sam, someone called. He turned around to see 3 men running after him, waving their hats. He waited. Afternoon, Walter, Bo, Jesse. He greeted them as they walked up, catching their breath. Glad we caught you, said Bo. We're going rattlesnake hunting in the morning. We want to get some of your lizard juice, said Walter. I ain't scared of no rattlesnake, said Jesse, but I don't want to come across one of those red-eyed monsters. I seen one once, and that was enough. I knew about the red eyes, of course. I hadn't heard about the big black teeth. It's the white tongues that get me, said Bo. Sam gave each man 2 bottles of pure onion juice. He told them to drink 1 bottle before going to bed that night, then a half bottle in the morning, then a half bottle around lunchtime. You sure this stuff works? Asked Walter. I'll tell you what, said Sam. If it doesn't, you can come back next week and I'll give you your money back. Walter looked around unsure as Bo and Jesse laughed. Then Sam laughed too. Even Mary Lou let out a rare hee-haw. Just remember, Sam told the men before they left, it's very important you drink a bottle tonight. You gotta get it into your bloodstream. The lizards don't like onion blood. Oh, so is that why they never bit Stanley and Zero when they were in the hole? Because they had eaten all of those what? They had eaten all those onions. Okay, we're back in the present. Stanley and Zero sat in the back seat of Mrs. Marengo's BMW. The suitcase lay between them. It was locked, and they decided they'd let Stanley's father try to open it in his workshop. You don't know what's in it, do you? She asked. No, said Stanley. I didn't think so. The air conditioning was on, but they drove with the windows down as well because, no offense, but you boys really smell bad. Mrs. Marengo explained that she was a patent attorney. I'm helping your father with the new product he's invented. He happened to mention your situation, so I did a little investigating. Clyde Livingston's sneakers were stolen sometime before 3:15. I found a young man, Derek Dunn, who said that at 3:20 you were in the bathroom fishing your notebook out of the toilet. 2 girls remember seeing you come out of the boys' restroom carrying a wet notebook. Stanley felt his ears redden. Even after everything he'd been through, the memory still caused him to feel shame. So you couldn't have stolen them, said Mrs. Marengo. He didn't. I did, said Zero. You did what? Asked Mrs. Marengo. I stole the sneakers. The lawyer actually turned around while driving and looked at him. I didn't hear that, she said, and I advise you to make sure I don't hear it again. What did my father invent? Stanley asked. Did he find a way to recycle sneakers? No, he's still working on that, explained Mrs. Marengo, but he invented a product that eliminates foot odor. Here, I've got a sample in my briefcase. I wish I had more. You two could bathe in it. She opened her briefcase with one hand and passed a small bottle back to Stanley. It had a fresh and somewhat spicy smell. He handed it to Zero. What's it called? Stanley asked. We haven't come up with the name yet, said Mrs. Marengo. It smells familiar, said Zero. Peaches, right? Asked Mrs. Marengo. That's what everyone says. A short while later, both boys fell asleep. Behind them, the sky had turned dark, and for the first time in over 100 years, a drop of rain fell into the empty lake. Okay, so tomorrow we have one more chapter. Okay. And we're going to see if we can watch the movie. Okay.